Hello and welcome back to the Unconventional Studio. This is Heather and I'm in the studio today working on a new project. We've got the upcoming Pensacola Quilter Guild Quilt Show in March. And one of the new categories this year is called Portal to the Future. And basically what this category is asking everyone to take some of those UFOs, those unfinished objects that they have in their stash, and finish them. Now, specifically for Portal to the Future, they are asking that all UFOs be done prior to 1980. So when I went back through, looking through the quilt collection that my mom has at her house, we were digging through the cedar chest. And in the bottom of the cedar chest was this cute little baby quilt. All right, everything's falling down around me. The dog's running. You know, it's one of those days. But anyway, so here is the baby quilt. Move my tea out of the way because y'all know every project I have has some tea spilled on it at some point. All right. This baby quilt was actually, I don't know if you can see because I've got some light issues this morning, but the baby quilt was created by my Aunt Joanne for my birth. And my birthday is March 24th. Send me lots of presents. I was born in 1972, so this project would qualify for Portal to the Future. Now, the other part of Portal to the Future was it had to be an unfinished object. When I looked at this baby quilt, it has five embroidered blocks, and then each of the blocks, my aunt, she used what we all in the quilting world say as cheater fabric, is actually fabric that has like a pinwheel design. So they look like quilt blocks. But the thing was, she did the binding, she added the quilt top, there is batting on the inside, and then she has a backing. The problem is, it was never quilted. She didn't even hand tie it, because oftentimes back in the 70s, in those big, thick, fluffy quilts that were made with the polyfill, the really thick polyfill, they would hand tie it at the corners. And I went in and I looked at each of these corners, and it hasn't been hand tied. It hasn't been quilted. So this quilt has now become a UFO, technically, because it was never quilted. So I'm going to be getting this ready for the Pensacola Quilters Quilt Show, and in it, what I'm going to do is quilt this. But in order to quilt it, I want it to go in and take the time with it to restore it. Because after all, this thing's almost 50 years old. Not telling my age or anything, y'all. But I want to preserve it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and, if y'all can see here, if I can get the camera to focus, some of this is already starting to come apart. Because since it was never quilted, when my mama threw it in the washing machine, it kind of just started falling apart, because all these moving pieces inside with the batting, you have to quilt a quilt. You know, even if it's hand tied, you've got to make sure that batting's not going to move around on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fancy seam ripper, and this is a shout out to all my sexy seam rippers out there. Y'all know who you are, and we love our seam rippers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the binding was sewn on, but I'm just going to go through and start ripping it out, and I'm going to take everything apart. So that's the first step today. So today you watched the first step of actually the story behind the quilt, because behind every good story there is a quilt, and we're going to start documenting those stories. And then I'm going to start restoring this quilt, so y'all follow along and help me on this journey about this quilt, and we'll tell a new story by the time it's all over.